Hi guys. So I was just gonna go get some writing done, but I gotta give you another reaction video. This time it's exactly what I promised. If somebody engages my points or tries to, I'm going to give them. And this was so amazing. This post, he, it was so much fun. This guy's Frosted1030. I don't know anything about him because unlike me, he doesn't have his data available on his website. You go to my website, you can find my books. It's quite easy to find, my work history and my education, LinkedIn, all of this, right? But some anonymous atheist troll showed up to spout off, and I've been having so much fun. I very rarely get handed such an easy pile of recycled horse fodder to disprove. But man, it's great. So I'm going to get into this. I'm going to put the link in. This is in response to yesterday's video on evolution, math, and microbes, where I was just talking about the one point where I completely jumped off the rails and didn't want anything more to do with evolutionary theory. So we're going to get started. I'm going to give you his lines, and then we'll get... Math is not science, he says. Now, it's possible that he's just never studied any science, and has no idea exactly the fact that science is built off of math. But, and math, wow, math is not science. If you mean they have different departments in universities, yeah. Um, before you could take engineering physics at college, where I started off as a physics major, when I went back to BSU, um, just just physics one to just freshman year, you had to be able to. I remember the weekend where Dr. Barr at Bemidji State University said, next week we're going to be working on torque. And a lot of this is going to involve, involve partial differentiation. It's in chapter 4, and I know that's calculus 3 stuff, but that's in chapter 14 of the textbook we're using. So you go teach it to yourself this weekend. The requirement to get into the calc-based physics class was you had to be enrolled in physics 1. But yeah, just teach yourself, just teach yourself one of the central principles of multivariable calculus. Yeah, math is not science. All right. Now, really, I could have just stopped right there because you obviously don't know anything about science if you say that science and math aren't the same. But it's so amusing to keep going that I'm gonna. You're using statistics wrong. The odds that we evolve are exactly 1 to 1, as this has been directly observed. Now, what he's doing is he's shifting the definition of terms. I put up a video about the origin of life, and that's part of evolution, of Darwinian evolutionary theory, which is commonly what is referred to as evolution. That's my definition of terms, right? And my problem is the first cause problems, the beginning of life. Now, we absolutely observe the elimination of unfit genetic material. I haven't slept in 20 hours, but I'm just having so much fun that I'm doing this. So I'm going to be a little bit tongue-tied. You're going to have to forgive me. All right. So the odds that we evolve are exactly 1 to 1. Has this been directly observed? All right. Now, I do have a degree in English, and so let me tell you what the definition of directly observed is. That means something happens and I'm watching it. Since I did a video about the beginning of life from nothing, that has not been directly observed. And that was what my video was about. If you want to talk about natural selection and unfit trait being eliminated, that's fine, but that's reducing genetic information. And nobody argues whether or not that happens. Everybody on all sides of the creation evolution debate agree on that. And then if you want to talk about the introduction by random chance of new beneficial genetic structures that are then able to reproduce and replace inefficient genetic structures, that has never been proven. That is nowhere even close. A lot of frauds have popped up. If you want to talk about, people in the late 1800s nailing moths to trees to make the famous photos, we can. But yeah, nope. So the logical fallacy, if he is actually talking about my point, then if he's actually addressing me, if he isn't doing a straw man argument, or if he isn't too stupid to have understood what I said originally, then what he's doing is a logical fallacy called post hoc ergo propter hoc. After this, therefore, because this. So he would have to be saying, because life exists, we evolved. And there, if life exists, this proves we evolved. No, it doesn't work that way. Look up logic. There's actually a wiki page on this particular logical fallacy. So he's not using my definition. He's arguing from something that I'm not debating, and or he doesn't know how to think. All of these are possibly true, so it isn't necessarily an either or, but in any case, nope. You're trying to use nucleotides, chemicals that react inside DNA, as some kind of simple math problem instead of understanding how chemistry works. Yeah, actually, the point that I was making, and I mentioned that I was dumbing things down, because I'm not making this argument to a guy who has a PhD in microbiology. I have debated a PhD in microbiology. Interestingly enough, he shook my hand and said I did the best presentation of creationism he'd ever encountered. But that was a different town and that was a different time. And that's what you get for randomly asking your waiter what he thinks about a creation evolution debate, because he just might have studied. I'm the kind of guy who accidentally loses weekends in, radiometric dating articles on argon radio halos. But hey, I wasn't talking, I'm not trying to persuade scientists. There are scientists I can point out to. We're going to get to that. But, that's okay. So I was being kinder to your position on evolution, to use a simple math problem instead, right? Because in order to deal with how chemistry actually works, then we can't just do 1 over 4 times 1 over 4 times 1 over 4 to see the absolutely impossible odds of an organism, enough genetic code to have an organism that can reproduce itself, something that has a metabolism, which is what my original video was, right? We're not doing that. Instead, what you want to do is you want to add the odds of creating, what was the number again? Let me double check the calculator. 319,324 nucleotides to form the 159,662 base pairs, right, that you would then need in a specific sequence to form the smallest ever functioning self-reproducing biological organism we've ever been able to, that has ever existed. And you need to have something that reproduces itself in order for, even assuming, right, and I don't agree with this, but even if I assumed that we could create, that we've discovered that you can mutate new useful genetic information instead of dying with cancer or losing information you needed, so that natural selection could go from there. I'm not arguing about that. I'm talking about step 1. That was my argument. I'm going to still talk about step 1, but we're going to deal with your argument. This is a reaction video as opposed to that other one. If you want to argue about my actual point, the video is still up. We want to keep doing straw men and then personal attacks, etc. We're going to get to, then this is the reaction video for you. So we're dealing with you, not my perfectly logical point. So instead of having the 1 over n, we're just using 1 to the 4, 1 4 to the 159,662nd power, which even, I went to Wolfram Math World and I threw it at their calculator and it said infinity, right? 1 over infinity equals 0. This is Calc 1 stuff. It's not really up for debate. And strangely enough, math and science, they are pretty much the same thing. Okay, so if I were going to actually do the odds of making enough nucleotides to then do the first roll, right? The first chance. Then we have to do the odds that the created nucleotides aren't going to be degraded by environmental circumstances. They're not going to be broken back down by the energy that created them, although we both know that actually happens in biology. We have a finite shelf life. So then we can't take an infinite number of chances, because assuming we finally get enough soup to make our random chance of creating the DNA, a functioning DNA molecule to create an organism that can continue the line, then we have to do preserving these, as opposed to dealing with them as simple eggs or simple units, right? So then you have to multiply this by another couple of things, and you get another order of magnitude of way closer to zero than we were already at, infinitely close to zero. This doesn't help your case. You just, prove to do it your way brings you 4 steps closer to my point that is freaking statistically impossible. Now you fast talk your way through some creationist bullshit. Aww, you're using big words. That's 2 syllables. And fail the important bit. Creationism has never been measured. False. Read Genesis record by Dr. Henry Morris. Evidence that supports a creation. We can keep going. I don't even need to go to. I don't even need to go very far. We can just look at the constant and rapidly degrading strength of the Earth's magnetic field. You can't go back more than about 100,000 years before the Earth's magnetosphere would be strong enough to pull the iron out of your blood at the rate that it's measured declining, to pull the iron out of your blood and rip it into orbit. And it's kind of hard to evolve right then. There are actual, completely having nothing to do with the Bible, mechanisms that we can look at and go, yeah, that can't have been going on the way that we observe it for 6 million years. And here's or 6 billion years. 2 billion years, 600 million years of evolution, I think, if I'm remembering off the top of my head. Haven't slept in 20 hours, so. But, the problem is you just want to ignore those scientific problems. And I gave you science. I haven't been quoting Bible verses, right? I'm not taking a collection. I'm just going where, once I was able to question the scientific process, I started running into really big problems. The magnetosphere is one, the consistently increasing salinity of the oceans, which we can backtrack, and again, you can't get like 100,000 years, 170,000 years for the salinity of the oceans, and then you are out of salt water, and we're supposed to have evolved in salt water. That's another problem. So there are these strange enough scientific physical things that have been measured and are cited by creationists. Creation has never been measured. Wrong. Creation has never been observed. Actually, Genesis purports to be the observation of it. So that's wrong. Or even hypothesized. Creation has never been hypothesized. Do you know what the words that you're using are? To hypothesize something means, what if this is true? So you're claiming that nobody has ever said, what if Genesis was true? Either you don't know what that word is, you're lying about what you think is true, or your remaining IQ point really needs to go out and find its missing twin, and so that you can have all of your intelligence back. There's no scientific credibility to the assertion at all. We'll get there. Then you go on to use a straw man. I suggest you read up on the science, which never discusses random chance. They don't typically use random chance. They use non-guided chance, right? The definition of evolution, American biology teachers. Okay, the National Association of Biology Teachers for America. They don't give a positive statement. They just kind of throw a bunch of gobbledygook around. So I can't give you a small quote. The That's a position on teaching evolution. That could be one of the reasons. Definition of evolution. Scientific evolution. All right, let's just go with evolution. Evolution definition, biology. And we're clicking. Nope. They're not talking about origins. They're just talking about natural selection, and nobody argues about natural selection, and I'm not arguing about natural selection. Let's see. When you completely ignore in your limited number set the odds when you factor in natural and artificial selection. No, actually I'm not. I'm leaving them out because they don't play in your favor. Natural and artificial selection eliminates chances, right? We take the group and we take the unfit out. So you get fewer rolls of the dice on your infinite chances you need to have a prayer of getting to step one. That doesn't help. That hurts your argument. Let's see. There's no scientific credibility. You ignore in your limited number set. All right. What you need is a background in biochemistry, medicine, biology, microbiology, or any other many sciences that independently confirm evolution. See, the only people that bring up random chance. This is the big quote. He highlighted. He put he made this in bold himself. And this is what we're really going to engage. The only people that are bringing up random chance are theists with no scientific background. Yada yada. What you need is a background in biochemistry, medicine, biology, microbiology, or any one of the other many sciences that independently confirm evolution. You ready, guys? Here we go. This is going to be fun. Okay. So, to start off, let's dig a little bit more, right? I was reducing the nucleotides to simple elements. Yeah, that doesn't make it more likely. Now I have to factor in the odds of generating enough complex molecular nucleotides out of the chemical soup, and then you get to the starting point of the mathematical formula I already described as impossible. Of course, we find amino acids scattered throughout the solar system, but these aren't nucleotides, just amino acids. And you need to point out the 1953 abiogenesis experiment that produced some amino acids. But then you're going to have to deal with a problem that it produced only about 10 of the 20, 10 of the 20 required amino acids, and it produced them. He didn't produce equivalent amino acids, right? Dr. Jerry Bergman's got a really good argument about this one. The many tabs I had to do to deal with the ridiculous amount of BS in your relatively short reply. And thank you for being brief, even if you were pathetically wrong. Let's see. The abiogenesis, probability arguments. All right. Yeah. Coppage notes that one, postulating a primordial sea with every single component necessary for life, which is only a theory, has never been proven. Speeding up the bonding rate as to form different chemical combinations 1 trillion times more rapidly than hypothesized to have occurred, allowing for a 4.6 billion year old Earth, as opposed to the shorter Earth ages, and using all the atoms on Earth as if they were nucleotides, still leaves the probability of a single protein molecule being arranged by chance as 1 in 10,261. Using the lowest estimate made before the discoveries of the past 2 decades raises the number several-fold. Coppage estimates the probability of 1 in 10 to the 119,879th power is necessary to obtain the minimum set of requirement estimate of 239 protein molecules for the smallest theoretical life form, which is even smaller than the one I was using because I'm a practical application guy. At this rate, he estimates it would require 10 to 119,831 years on the average to obtain a set of these proteins by naturalistic evolution. The number he attained is 10 is greater than the current estimate age for the Earth. In other words, the event is outside the range of probability by a factor of, it doesn't even factor into statistic digits. So it's how much older is it than the Earth? 10 to the 119,000 billion would take 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Oh, but we're dealing with powers, right? 10 to the 119,831 times greater than the greater than the current estimated age of the Earth. In other words, the event's outside the range of possibility. All right, so what you need to do if you want to attack the idea that the science can never prove that life can commit from anything, right? Then you need to go to the 1953 experiments and the subsequent ones. All right. One day, abiogenesis is needed to produce life. It's a long article. This is what I get for reading stuff only by science. Right, here we are. So the Urey-Miller experiments, 1953. They seem to the Urey-Miller origin of life experiments seem to provide astounding evidence of life, but it doesn't work out. In fact, 40 years after the original experiment, Miller told me, and this is a 1996 article with Scientific American author Horgan, who's famous and a professional science journalist. It hasn't worked out this way. In fact, almost 40 years after his original experiment, Miller told me solving the riddle of the origin of life had turned out to be more difficult than he or anyone else had envisioned. If you want to talk about the success of artificially creating sequenced events, then we can talk about the fact that the highest number we've been able to produce so far in scientific experimentation is 55 is a sequence of 55 base pairs. So I did a little bit of I'm going to use the image of a Jenga block because I did the math on this. Each Jenga block is 1.5 centimeters tall, and the base is it's 3 Jenga blocks. So 55 sequenced nucleotides is a Jenga block, 27.5 centimeters or about 10 inches tall. This totally proves that random chance can create a Jenga block 79.8 kilometers tall. That's the argument. Right. No, it's okay. It's totally serious. Then you go on that science has absolutely proven this, and that only people who aren't scientists, people who know nothing and are creationists, talk about this probability of origins, which is the video you're reacting to. So I'm going to stick to my original point. Dr. Jerry Bergman, I'm going to put a link up to that, which I've just talked about some. We've only been able to make 10 of the 20 required amino acids to make the process go, and we're just as likely to create incompatible amino acids. Those of you who have no scientific background, amino acids are these fundamental biological building blocks, right? But like your left and right hands, they have sides, right? The terminology depends on whether you use the old version of left and right or newer terminologies for it, but they're oriented different. You can have the same chemical combination aimed in two different ways, and they don't go well together, right? You need to have them orient to, they need to have a compatible orientation in order to fit in and function. As a matter of fact, when they're reversed, they're frequently poisonous to one another, and the abiogenesis, just creating nucleotides out of the appropriate chemicals in a soup with lightning strikes and boiling, which is the Urey Miller experiment in 1953, and it creates equal probability of both orientations of amino acids, and they tend to cancel one another out because, again, they're poisonous to one another in combination. You need to have the right spin. So you take my 1 over infinity, and now you multiply the bottom number by 2, right? Oh, plus forming the nucleotide. So then you have to multiply, the bottom number by 2, and then you have to multiply the bottom number by another power of of another 390 some thousand power of all the different molecules required to form the three fundamental building blocks of nucleotide. Yeah, the odds did not just improve in your favor, but I've gotten more specific, so I hope you feel better about that. Tool. Okay, so let's talk. I wanted to talk then. I didn't usually want to do this because I was just giving why I was convinced. But you say nobody with any scientific background knows this, and only idiots talk about this. So I gave you Dr. Jerry Bergman. He's gotten the best argument that I've got. Let me tell you a little bit something about Dr. Jerry Bergman, who wrote this for creation.com. I'm going to have a link to his bio and a link to his article in the description. So here's the description from creation.com, the summary of his work. Jerry Bergman has taught biology, genetics, chemistry, biochemistry, anthropology, geology, and microbiology at Northwest State College in Archibald, Ohio for 25 years. He has 9 degrees, including 7 graduate or postgraduate, depending on how you want to describe them, degrees. Graduate of the Medical College of Ohio, Wayne State University in Detroit, the University of Toledo, and Bowling Green State University, and that is a tough school. He has over 800 publications in 12 languages, 20 books and monographs. He's taught at the Medical College of Ohio, where he was a research associate in the Department of Experimental Pathology. He also taught 6 years at the University of Toledo, 7 years at Bowling Green State University. I'm going to fast forward some highlights. He did a book on the practical functionality of vestigial organs with Dr. Joseph Howe. He's done a book on psychology and religious cults, a book on religious discrimination, book on mental health published by Claudius Verlag in München, college textbooks on evaluation, and contributed to a couple dozen other textbooks, consulted on other 20 science textbooks on biology and biochemistry. He's professionally presented over 100 scientific papers. And other work includes over 10 years experience at various mental health and psychology clinics as a licensed professional clinical counselor. Oh, well, shit. I guess he's a scientist. And he's the least qualified person I'm going to use as a reference. You can give up now, or I could just keep citing, because I'm gonna. All right. My favorite is Dr. Henry Morris, who's got a PhD in hydraulic engineering, was a co-author of a widely used college textbook on advanced engineering hydraulics. He's got what's called a terminal degree in his field, meaning there's no further education. He's got all the education there is. He kind of actually started the modern creationist movement by talking about the fact that the flood could be scientifically explained, that it was possible. Now you can have conflicting experts, but you can't have a higher expert than somebody who has the highest degree in his field. It's just, then you have to start actually listening to arguments and processing thoughts instead of just calling names. Like, the only people who ever do this are creationists who don't know anything in science. So I'm only going to be citing scientists from now on. I like one of my favorite sources is Dr. Job Martin, who was a successful dentist, and he got a doctorate in a medical profession. I hear that they do chemistry and biology to get those medical degrees. He was trained as an evolutionist. He was converted by a challenge of his students, right? He was a trained professional evolutionist, and then he got challenged, like I did, to examine the evidence, and he has way better at the research than I am. And he actually found a few examples of biological structures that are too complex to have evolved and can't be broken down into simpler forms, right? You can't get an intermediate form to these. These are called the problem of irreducible complexity. He's been lecturing for the last 20 years about them. He also managed to get a master's degree in systematic theology as he converted to Christianity because of the preponderance of the scientific evidence without ever actually going to the Bible, right? The math. The math and the biology and the chemistry converted him to Christianity. Funny how that happened. I guess he doesn't know anything, even though he had his PhD and was teaching at a medical school. But you're smarter than him, so I know that you'll be able to contradict him. I'll just hold my breath. All right. So one of the things that I found out, because I was having so much fun at the idea of shit kicking your pathetic argument all up and down my YouTube channel, as is currently happening, is a list by philosopher Dr. Vincent Torley from Australia. And if you notice that I'm using professionally trained thinkers and scientists here, just because of your objection, he put together a list of 7 Nobel Prize winners who either criticized Darwinism or openly embraced intelligent design. I'm going to put the link up there. So here's some of the fun highlights from his work. We got Dr. Brian Josephson, who won the Nobel Prize for Physics in 1973. He was an atheist. He didn't believe in God, but he couldn't find enough evidence to subscribe to evolution. So even non-religious scientists who are way better at math than I am find the math unsupportable. And Dr. Josephson in 2008 on a lecture to the Cambridge Physics Society, may have heard of Cambridge, there are scientists there, on March 5th, 2008. The lecture is called A Critical Point for Science, and I can provide you a link to the PowerPoint from this lecture if you really want it. So here's the key quote I wanted to share with you. So I said at some point this theory just looks a bit like theology, and I can imagine intelligent design is real. Intelligent design is rejected just because it's part of the scientific culture, that it cannot be true. You must not talk about it, but it's not actually disproved. I think it will turn out that there is a design, and that the usual theories are wrong there as well. We've got Dr. Richard Smalley, who got the Nobel Prize for Chemistry in 1996, and talked about his change of mind from evolution to creation is coming from 2 books by astrophysicist Dr. Hugh Ross and chemist Dr. Azalea Reyna's books. And here's what the late Dr. Smalley had to say about the text that converted him in a television interview in 2005. Evolution has just been dealt its death blow. After reading Origins of Life, with my background in chemistry and physics, you were asking for chemistry knowledge to actually talk about the probability of this, right? Oh, I found a chemist. Oh, he won the Nobel Prize. Will that be okay as a source? Tool. It is clear that evolution could not have occurred. The new book, Who Was Adam, is the silver bullet that puts the evolutionary model to death. We've got Nobel Prize winner for physiology or medicine, because you wanted medicine or biology. That was what we needed to turn to for proof of evolution. All right, Nobel Prize winner, Nobel Prize for physiology and medicine, Sir John Eccles in the 50s. If you have ever heard so he's got his Nobel Prize for neurological research. I believe that biological evolution is not simply chance and necessity. That could never have produced us with our values. I can sense that evolution may be the instrument of a purpose, lifting it beyond chance and necessity, at least in the transcendence that brought forth human creatures gifted with self-consciousness. So what was his big problem with evolution? He needed to have an intelligence behind it, because you couldn't possibly with random chance, get it. Oh shit, was that a Nobel Prize winner with the degrees in the field that you required talking about the random chance? I guess he must be a know-nothing creationist. Where's your Nobel Prize? Nobel Prize winner and co-inventor of antibiotics, Ernest Cain, had some interesting quotes. He was an atheist. Left Catholicism, quite young. Some of the words are big, so I'll go slowly. And he wasn't talking to a YouTube audience, so he uses complicated sentence structures. So I'll sum it up, because my English degree gives me the knowledge to do so. I would rather believe in fairies than concerning materialistic accounts, and that's an old-fashioned word meaning there's no supernatural intervention. It's just the natural random world. The process you're describing. Concerning materialistic accounts of the origin of life and of living species, Cain wrote, I would rather believe in fairies than in such wild speculation. And again, I have said for years that speculation about the origin of life leads to no useful purpose, as even the simplest living system is far too complex to be understood in terms of the extremely primitive chemistry scientists have used in their attempts to explain the unexplainable that happened billions of years ago. God cannot be explained away by such naive thoughts. Cain is cited in The Life of Ernest Cain, Penicillin and Beyond, 1985. And again, this mechanistic, again, that's old-fashioned word, meaning it's just unthinking, unguided, what you call random chance. And oh shit, here's another Nobel Prize winner talking about it. This mechanistic concept of the phenomena of life and its infinite varieties of manifestations, which purports to ascribe the origin and development of all living species, animals and plants, and microorganisms to the haphazard, blind interplay, random chance, of the forces of nature in the pursuance of one aim only, namely that for the living system to survive, is a typical product of the naive 19th century euphoric attitude towards the potentialities of science, which spread the belief that there were no secrets of nature that could not be solved by the scientific approach given only sufficient time. Cain, 1970, Social Responsibility in the Scientist in Modern Western Society, given to London, the Council of Christians and Jews. Raymond von Damadian is the inventor of the first MRI. I'm going to stop going. There's a longer list. Like on top of the 7 that this article that I'm going to put the list on, he was able to find 21 more. But I think I'm proving my point, so I'm going to move away from pure Nobel Prize winners and just go to world famous, renowned scientific geniuses, of which you aren't one. Raymond von Damadian is the inventor of the first MRI, the magnetic resonance scanning machine, described by MIT as one of the most useful diagnostic tools of our time. He was received over 45 patents. Dr. Damadian's invention has earned him several top awards, including the United States National Medal of Technology, the Lincoln Edison Medal. You might have to look that one up. And induction into the National Inventors Hall of Fame alongside Thomas Edison, Alexander Graham Bell, and the Wright brothers. In 2003, he was nominated for the Nobel Prize, and he was denied for his life-saving invention, and they gave it to the 2 evolutionists who improved his invention, and not him who invented it in the first place, which tells you there's some politics involved in the Nobel Prize, in case you couldn't tell when they gave Obama the Peace Prize for getting elected. So he was an outspoken creationist. That's basically why they didn't give him the Nobel Prize in 2003. I'm back to another Nobel Prize winning scientist who disagrees with you, you tool. There is the Nobel Prize winning physicist, UK Berkeley professor, Baptist preacher Charles Howard Towns. He received the Nobel for his work in quantum electronics, which is interesting because he also invented something you may have heard of called the laser and the maser. I don't think you probably would have heard of the maser because I'm not getting a lot of education coming from your commentary. Here's his quote. Intelligent design, as one sees it from a scientific point of view, seems to be quite real. This is a very special universe. It's remarkable that it came out just this way. If the laws of physics weren't just the way they are, we couldn't be here at all. The sun couldn't be here. The laws of gravity and nuclear laws and magnetic theory, quantum mechanics, and so on have to be just the way they are for us to be here. All right? But if you've heard of Planck's constant, Nobel Prize winner and theoretical physicist Max Planck's comment on the matter might matter to you. All matter originates and exists only by virtue of a force which brings the particles of an atom to vibrate and holds this minute solar system of the atom together. We must assume behind this force the existence of a conscious and intelligent mind. Crap. And there's again the idea that it's simply probability, it's simple improbable to the point of impossibility that all of the factors involved in reality itself, much less evolution, requires a brain behind it. I can keep going. I've got quite a list, and it would be a joy. But quod erat demonstratum, punk. That which must has been proven has been proven. Let's go to the rest. The real question of the day is, why do you feel that an Iron Age superstition is a better explanation than what we have built since? I don't believe that an Iron Age superstition is a better explanation. I believe that the preserved record of first God and then Adam and then the people after Adam, which has preserved the history of the world since it began, is more reliable than people who throw out everything that doesn't agree with them ahead of time. Am I afraid of change? No. Am I afraid of being wrong? Hell no. If I find out that I'm wrong, then I can be better. You, however, haven't shown me to be wrong. You've thrown out a lot of generalities. You haven't given me any references, so I can't disassemble your references. You haven't bothered to give me any. The few statements that you have been able to definitively make are so easily disproved that a guy who hasn't slept in a day has been able to do it in 10 or 15 minutes of internet research. I've just been formatting the how I wanted to structure my rebuttal. So I can't dig any deeper into facts because like the deepest intellectual thing you've given me is calling something bullshit. You've confused natural and artificial selection, which is a post beginning of life problem, with my argument about the beginning of life. So I don't actually think that you understand the spoken word very well. You think that math and science are separate things. I really should encourage you, go to a college website and look up the requirements to getting a science degree. Science. Back to that one. And once again, I haven't needed to resort to the Bible at all because science itself is enough for me not to believe in evolution. Just like the atheist Nobel Prize winner who thought science itself was enough to not believe in the evolution, and all the other Nobel Prize winners that I just cited. So you can start debating the actual mechanics of the theory, but if you want to argue no one with any intelligence or education believes what you believe, so you must be stupid, I'm going to eat you alive. It's so easy to disprove, and this is one of the great things about the internet is it pries people out of their little sound chamber. I grew up as an evolutionist, right? And I was a science nerd. I had a drunk uncle show up at my 10th birthday party and say, and I quote, "Jesus Christ, Dot, when can we get the little freak something other than science encyclopedias?" Right? I turned down a full ride to Georgia Tech out of high school because I knew I was going to be a pastor. But that goes back to I got offered a full ride to Georgia Tech straight out of high school. You want to call me stupid? We can go. You want to produce some verifiable or critical or something I can actually deal with on an intellectual basis? Fine. If you're just going to call names, right, or repeat the same arguments that I've already engaged, see the channel trailer. I'm not going to deal with you anymore. I have actual 4 jobs. I've got enough things to do on my mind. But you presented me with this softball that was so easy to rip the cover off of that I just couldn't resist the low-hanging fruit, and I had to disassemble the pathetic points that you offered. Really, really, there are way smarter atheists. Go study under some of them before you come trolling back around here, because we're not dealing in the junior high league. All right? Or you could present some of your own scientific curriculum, some own scientific achievements, or you could engage, do some research on the Nobel Prize winning scientists I've just described, engage their arguments. I'd love to listen to that. Of course, you'd have to think and comprehend, which you haven't shown me the ability to do, since the point you were making isn't the point that I made in my original video. Beyond a mathematical calculation. You didn't even understand what part of evolutionary theory I was talking about. So I kind of despair of further intellectual engagement in you. But man, you threw me such a softball I couldn't resist. For those of you who have suffered through this tools argument, where we're going to go now is I've redone one of my old series of reaction videos, a lot faster than before, a lot less ramble, to the 78 questions for Christians from an atheist. I'm going to have those up now. They're high def. They're not with this cheap little webcam, but you didn't really need to see a lot of high definition in order for an argument this easy. So I just wanted to record it, and I'll get this uploaded while I sleep. So I'm gonna have another video in the next, another pair of videos the next day or two to replace the older and a little more disjointed things. And so what I wanted to do with those, and I'll describe later, is I went through the 78 questions and I gave the knee-jerk responses, right? I did the most honest, most direct responses I could give. And hopefully it'll be a lot more fast-moving than the first version, and it'll be enjoyable. So that was my response to Frosted 1030's pathetic attempt to disassemble my original argument, which he apparently didn't understand in the first place. But man, I love it when people come to me with things this easy to tear apart. No scientist ever says that, only creationists. And science isn't math. And and one to one because we directly observed the origin of life. What? Do you have a TARDIS? Did you time travel? Do you do you not know what direct observation means? Man, so pathetic. All right, thanks for suffering through this guy. I hope you found something entertaining or enlightening, YouTube audience, and more to come. All right, peace.